He's a friend of yours. He's a friend of mine. It's an honor for me to introduce to you our Congressman, Rick Boucher.
Thank you. State Senator Philip Puckett, thank you so much for those kind words. And I want to say how fortunate we are here in Pocahontas and in Tazewell County, and in fact across the entire senatorial district, to have the services of State Senator Philip Puckett. He's a friend. He is a very effective state senator. Let's thank him for what he does for us in Richmond. And I'm pleased to be on this program with my good friend and your outstanding delegate, Dan Bowling. Dan is also a friend and highly effective in bringing to Tazewell County, Buchanan County, and next door to Russell County the benefits from state government that are moving our communities forward. I appreciate Dan's hard work, and I'm glad that he's with us today, and I'd like to ask that you join with me in thanking Dan for all that he's doing for us in our state capital. I also want to add my voice of thanks to the organizer of this event, this year and every year, a person who has true and deep community spirit, and frankly, every community in Southwest Virginia would count itself fortunate if it had someone to organize and to put forward the best face of the community in the way that Tom Childress does. He does a terrific job with this annual event. He gets in touch with my congressional office about 6 months before the event to make sure that we have it reserved on the calendar. Now, I keep telling Tom every time he calls that I always have this event reserved on my calendar. In fact, it's the first thing I put on my calendar every year, because I would not miss coming to Pocahontas for this annual Labor Day event. But Tom takes nothing for granted. He organizes every aspect of this event. He does a great job with it, and he is a real treasure for the town of Pocahontas. Let's join in thanking Tom Childress for what he does for us. I had the opportunity last week to be in Pulaski County, and I was there for a reason that benefits not only Pulaski County but all of Southwest Virginia. Our region has a lot of veterans, and I was pleased to hear one of the previous speakers talk about the importance of veterans and recognize those in the audience here today. We have a lot of veterans because it's always been deemed by Southwest Virginians to be patriotic to serve in our nation's armed forces. And we have a higher than normal percentage of Southwest Virginians serving in uniform. That's always been true. And of course that means that we have a higher than normal for the typical congressional district percentage of veterans in our population. But while we have numerous veterans, we have never had a veteran cemetery in Southwest Virginia. And the nearest veteran cemetery is all the way over in Amelia County, not very far from Richmond, and from Tazewell County, that's about a 7-hour drive each way. It is simply too far for veterans and their families to be able to use that cemetery in Amelia County as the final resting place. And so for a number of years, I've had a goal of building a veteran cemetery in Southwest Virginia. Last week, we obtained a federal grant in the amount of $7.2 million in order to build Southwest Virginia's first veterans cemetery, and it's going to be in Pulaski County. Construction begins this year. I want to say a few words about two key federal issues. One of those relates to health care, and that is the matter that's very much on our national agenda. The President's going to be making a speech to the Congress on Wednesday night about that. And the other one is the challenge of climate change and what Congress is doing in order to respond to that. And I'm going to address that issue first. Philip Puckett mentioned that in the course of his introduction. And I want to tell you what this debate is about, what the legislation does, why it is deemed to be necessary, and where we go from passage of that bill in the House. Unfortunately, The United States Supreme Court in 2007 declared that greenhouse gases are pollutants and that therefore they have to be regulated. And under that holding, the Environmental Protection Agency is now under a mandate to regulate greenhouse gases. I wish that it were not so. But when that decision was handed down by the Supreme Court, the debate was effectively ended about whether or not we would have federal regulation of greenhouse gases. It then became a certainty that regulation would occur. And the only question that then remained was whether EPA would regulate greenhouse gases, agencies' regulations. Now, those are the only two choices that we have before us. My preference would have been that we not address this, because inevitably there's a risk of some economic harm anytime a new regulation goes into effect. I would have frankly preferred that we not address this. But with the Supreme Court decision in 2007, that choice was taken away. And the only question was whether EPA would regulate or whether it would be the Congress. Now, virtually all interested parties, given that choice, would rather have the Congress adopt its own regulation than have the Environmental Protection Agency adopt the greenhouse gas regulation. Why? Because EPA cannot take into effect what its regulation will do in terms of the effect on the economy. Congress can do that. And in drafting the bill that has gone through the House, I have had a key role in making sure that the coal industry and coal mining jobs have been protected. And we've done a number of things to provide that assurance. We have made it financially attractive and possible for the electric utilities that burn coal to meet the obligations that would be imposed to reduce greenhouse gases, all the while continuing to use coal in at least their existing tonnages at the coal-fired power plants. We've provided free allowances so that they don't have to go out and buy allowances. That would make it very expensive for electricity consumers, and it would make it harder to justify continuing using coal. We provided allowances for free, and it was my amendment that made that happen. We provided on an annual basis 2 billion tons of offsets. Now, what I mean by that is that the electric utility, instead of reducing emissions at the electricity plant itself, can just keep burning coal at that plant and then go pay somebody to plant trees. Trees absorb carbon dioxide, store those in the roots, and that is an effective way to reduce carbon dioxide emissions. And another one of my amendments made it possible for electric utilities to meet their obligations by doing that, so they don't have to give up coal use at all. Now, the Environmental Protection Agency ran a model of those provisions when they passed the House, and here's what that model shows. It says that the effect on electricity prices is almost invisible. It's about 22 to 25 cents on a daily basis for the typical electricity consumer. It's about half the cost of a postage stamp every day. And it also predicted that by 2020, coal use would actually be greater in America than it is today. So we're not going to see coal jobs lost. We're not going to see coal sales fall. As a consequence of this bill, we're going to be able to preserve and maintain that coal-producing economy. Now, it was my amendments that made that happen. The easy thing for me to do in this would have been simply to announce that I was going to vote no and just remove myself from this debate.